And I think I am live. I think I'm live. Am I live? Someone will tell me here in a moment. You can see I have my special guest today, Daniel, keeping me company right there, as well as Miss Kitty, who is sitting on the table here. She's not going to pay attention to you, though. She'll just sit there. And we have confirmation from Helter, and I see Helter, Savage, Johnny Dragon, Shawnee Mommy, are joining us this afternoon, and we'll give people a chance to catch up here as I continue doing this. Monkey is here. And we lost Daniel. Daniel decided to leave. That's okay. He wants to sit somewhere else. What are you going to do? That's a cat for you. You can't rely on him. There's Moki. Thanks for joining us, Moki. Get started here with the news in a minute, taking a look at some of the stupid things or some of the overlooked things in the news that may be of interest, maybe a particular interest, or interesting enough if you can read between the lines on certain things, because sometimes there's a story behind the story. There's Kaylin says they finally got a chance to join. There we go. I'll start putting those up. Stacy Lynn is here. Thank you again, everybody. Savage says third thumbs up. And Johnny says, feed us our daily bread of tough love. Yeah, it kind of is, isn't it? Maybe that's why I'm disliked by the powers that be. Sven says more drugs found at the White House. Were there? Did they find more? ICO is there. But the, Hulkamaniacs, yeah. A couple of Hulkamaniacs. That's the NWO, Hulk Hogan and Cobra Commander. My choices for president and vice president. Again, shout out and thank you to those of you who have been helping with the GoFundMe for the stray animals. Bam says you should have a He-Man flag instead of the American flag. He-Man, huh? And Kaylin says, hope you and the wife and all the cats are doing good. Yeah, we're doing all right. We're hanging in there. There's Bingo joining us today. And again, of course, we are running the GoFundMe to help with the cats. A couple more names to add to that list to say thank you to. That's Myrna and Richard, who helped out with the GoFundMe a couple of days ago. It's been slow. It started off okay, and it's been slow going, but that's all right because there's no obligation. Just trying to get some help with the stray animals that we take care of is all. And, I can run down the list again, including Myrna and Richard, Ashley, Bernardo, another Richard, Charles, Thomas, Moises, Raccoon, Mike, Thomas, Prime Mover, Jimmy, Tristan, John, Keith and family, Robert, Edwin, Andrew, Cletus, Dino, Karen, Jackie, Visa, Edward, Keisha, Velma, and Chris have all participated either in the GoFundMe or with the PayPal link or by sending something directly to the P.O. box to help the strays, all of which is very much appreciated indeed. So, yeah, more drugs at the White House, huh? That's interesting. And there's a lot to be said for that. I didn't pull up anything necessarily on that. I wasn't thinking about that today, but it is important to note that you don't go in and out of there without being checked over. They do have dogs. They do have, they even have artificial means by which they can detect narcotics. Those drones, those Weeble-shaped drones that patrol the malls now have an olfactory sensor and they can't smell narcotics. So yeah, Kayleen, it can be very expensive. We're doing our best. We enjoy taking care of them though. Yeah, that's you'll be in school longer to become a vet than you will to become an actual doctor. Think about that. Armored says the White House was just selling cocaine to finance the Ukraine. Yeah, maybe. Maybe another Contra scandal, maybe. So if it got in there, it got in there in the diplomatic bag. That's how it ended up there. And they say, oh, well, we can't figure out who left it or how it got there. And they're not even consistent about where it was found. but as much surveillance as there is, one of the most protected buildings in the world and one of the most surveyed buildings in the world, you can't tell who was there when it was left between when it was found and whenever people started coming in that day, even to determine who it might have been. I'm sure they know and they just don't want to say, because it's going to end up being somebody connected to the White House, unfortunately, something like that. Sven says drones can sniff it in your sweat, but we don't know who did it. If we're honest, it's in all the candy dishes. It could be. It could be. Johnny says, one of these days I need to tell you interesting things I noticed at the airports lately. Indeed. And Armand says, FBI going to raid Trump's house again and rub cocaine on his bed. Probably. I don't find it outside the realm of possibility for the planting of evidence where this sort of thing is concerned. But this is something, Prime Mover. There's Prime Mover want me to start all over again. We've barely gotten started, Mover. Barely gotten started. But taking a look here at, I thought this was interesting simply because of the stupidity of it. This is still going on. You see that? Climate activists spray paint on $13 million private jet. Kayleen says, so much surveillance that it becomes too much. How funny. Yeah, indeed. Just like at the supermarket, how many cameras do you need? And then when something happens, they don't know nothing. But just like anywhere else. But yeah, climate activists spray paint on $13 million private jet. I think this is interesting. And this is just a snippet, and I can show you the video clip, and I'll leave the audio off. It says, 4 activists from Fierto Vegetal, an Extinction Rebellion, were arrested by Spanish police on July 14th after trespassing on the runway of Ibiza Airport, Spain, and covering a $13 million private jet in paint. The activists were protesting the lack of action on, climate change. By who? By the Spanish political parties ahead of the upcoming general election. Wow, that's so useful. How useful they are with their wannabe protest. This stuff is infuriating to me with how stupid it is, okay? We're not actually vandalizing the jet. We're throwing paint on it. And that paint will be cleaned off by the time it needs to be used next. All right? Whenever they're ready to use that jet next, it'll look brand new because the person who owns that can afford to clean it up. It's not like your car and somebody came and threw a bucket of paint on it and you're like, oh shit, how am I going to afford that? These people can freaking afford it. All right? So you're not really protesting in any way that's efficient. Secondly, whose jet is it? Are you protesting someone specific, or you just randomly attack the jet? That's pointless. That's absolutely pointless. Number 3, this is an airport. It's not the same as regular trespassing. You do something like that at an airport, you're in real trouble. It's like it's like in the United States. I know Spain is more strict, but in the US, that's a federal offense. You're not just going to jail. Okay, it's not like in the UK with all the nonsense with the museums, which also is not really vandalism because they're throwing paint on shields. Those paintings are covered and protected with layers of plexiglass. So all they got to do is come and squeegee it down after they've done being stupid and glued their hand to the wall or whatever other foolishness they do. So who cares? What have you protested? But they're not just going to jail. Armored wants to know if do cats not get along with tortoises? They'll attack anything. They would torment a turtle unless they were used to it. Johnny says regarding security and new ways to shop in a store. Okay. Jack says funny things is these climate crazies don't know how much green energy actually pollute. Batteries and solar panels have to be made. Yeah, somehow. Um, Prime says, I like it. Looks like Eddie Van Halen's guitar. Yeah, actually, they could just, as long as the call numbers are showing and you wipe off those windows, you could probably leave it. uh, Unbelievable. And Bingo says, can't they charge you as a terrorist for trespassing on federal airports? Yes. And also power stations, actual power plants. You ever drove by a power plant and they have signs that say, do not stop? If you do stop, you will be investigated by a team very quickly. A lot of, I mean, power plants have their own SWAT teams, as do airports, unless it's a private airport. But I don't think that is. And Monkey says lithium mining is very polluting from what I've heard. Yeah, and you would be correct. But yeah, they could be charged with terrorism for even being there. But it's not the same as regular trespassing. They are in serious trouble. I think they overstepped so that they could get some TikTok views. It's unfortunate. Well, not really. Maybe they'll learn a lesson, but not likely either. It's kind of funny. Bam says those extinction people get funding from big parasites totally controlled it. Yeah, they're probably getting their funding from the very people they think they're protesting in many cases. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that were the case. That wouldn't surprise me. And they wouldn't know the difference. These people don't know what they're doing. And they want to protest and they want you to change. Or more to the point, they want the government to force you to change. But what have they changed? You want to protest? You want to help the climate? Go home, shut off your lights, shut off your refrigerator. Well, your refrigerator is going to go off anyway if you shut the power off, right? Don't cook anymore. Shut off your gas, turn off your heat, turn off your air conditioning, get rid of your transportation, ride a bike everywhere. I bet you these people don't do that. If you want to take a stand, you take a stand with yourself first. You live by a standard first. When Gandhi decided to go full tilt on his protesting, everywhere he went, actually for the rest of his life, he was barefoot or in simple sandals and wearing a robe, and the robe he made himself to be as simple as possible because it makes a point. Let me see here. Dragon says it would be funny if we saw a shocking moment where these people receive their court sentences for damage compensation. Bingo says no lawyer bail and possibly no trial post 9/11. And that is Miss Kitty scratching her head, all that noise. Thanks, Kitty. Shawnee says obviously these clowns have never read Sun Tzu. They are smooth brained. Smooth brained. Yeah, that's right. That's a good analogy, actually. Because the more complicated or more intelligent a person or any creature is, the more detail or texture there is on the brain. If they're not very intelligent, then all of those curves and squiggles are usually pretty smooth. Monkey says the climate protesters remind me of people believing that Bernie Sanders would bill the college debt for their own mistake of taking college and making things free. Yeah, they believe it. Stewart is here, says he was abducted by aliens. I hope that went well. Did they compensate you? Helter says the damage those putzes did to the plane in terms of cleaning caused more harm to the planet. Yeah, because all they're going to do is wash the paint down the drains. These two Muppets get arrested and sued for criminal damage. Priceless. Yeah. So all the detergents they're going to use and the paint will go down into the waterway. That's a good point. Jack says, I'm waiting for the day these leftists piss off the wrong person or people. You won't see that. Johnny says people need the constant electricity to keep their phone charged so they can watch TikTok and play Candy Crush. Yeah, they could shut their phones off. Excuse me. That would be a good protest. I don't see them shutting off their phones. They're using the phones to film their vandalism. Oh, this is another one. This is about Gavin Newsom. So you know it's going to be ridiculous. Let's see what Gavin Newsom has to say. There he is. He looks so happy. Gavin Newsom wants to destroy the Second Amendment. Only Gavin? I think most of these politicians do. Jack says most people would panic if power was out for more than 6 hours. Yeah, they wouldn't know what to do with themselves. They wouldn't know what to do. So last month, California Governor Gavin Newsom unveiled his proposal for a 28th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which the Democrat says would enshrine fundamental, broadly supported gun safety measures into law while leaving the Second Amendment unchanged. Now, there's a word salad for you. And then he wants to change it, but then says it'll be unchanged, right? I'm going to initiate changes that would leave the Second Amendment unchanged. That's an oxymoron. That's an oxymoron. Although the Second Amendment protects individual liberty by telling the government what it can't do with respect to gun control regulations, hasn't stopped them for the last couple hundred years, has it? Newsom proposed constitutional amendment would tell the government what it must do to restrict what? Individual liberty through gun control. So is it going to affect it or not? The California governor's proposal would ban civilian sales for semi-automatic firearms commonly owned by millions of Americans. And of course, I'm sure all of you know semi-automatic is anything that's not a revolver or that requires a slide. So anything magazine fed is semi-automatic because for the most part, we don't have fully automatic weapons. You can obtain them with the right licenses. It's expensive and it's very intrusive to do so. Very few people actually do it except for select collectors and things like that. So let me see. Strip law-abiding young adults of their right to keep and bear arms, and in the form of waiting periods and universal background checks impose, which we already have. I mean, some states already impose waiting periods. Illinois is one. And they all have background checks because everybody gets scanned through the Brady system. Impose many layers of bureaucratic red tape between peaceable citizens and the exercise of their natural right to self-defense. And we already see that in every state. Some states are better than others, but we already have that. The notion that this idea would do anything other than gut the Second Amendment is, of course, laughable. And despite Newsom's insistence that the measures are popular, of course he's going to say that, they've been passed only by a small minority of states. His amendment has no chance whatsoever of being passed by a 2/3 majority of both houses of Congress, much less of being ratified by the requisite number of state legislators. He's just doing that for talking points. He's doing that to get attention, to act like he cares. You know how that is. Billy Fighter says he just watched the home burglar video. Oh, on the Prepper University channel. Thank you, Billy Fighter, for joining us. One that I think I missed there, I forget, is that burglars don't just break into houses that look high end. Depending upon where you are, they'll break into any house. They'll break into a house that looks like it's going to fall down if they think anything's in there. Sven says rare earth mineral produced phones. There was another dude that took the guns and then rounded people up. Yeah, that's happened a few times in history. Jack says would never pass. Yeah, not likely. He's just doing it to act like he's doing something. Prime says people like to heat their houses with charcoal grills during power outages. Darwinism is fast forward. Oh yeah, heat your house with a charcoal grill. That's a great idea. You want to suffocate to death. or start a fire from the ceiling down. Monkey says that even in my college government class, you'd need 75% of the 50 states to even approve it, from what I learned. And that's something that most of us should have learned in civics in high school if they still taught it, which they don't. They don't teach you your rights so that you don't know what they are. Dragon says if the governor is anti-self-defense advocate coalition, friends got their way, the Second Amendment would be dead in all but name only. It kind of almost is because of how tightly regulated things are from state to state and all the restrictions. Again, any gun law is a violation, even if it's a positive one, because it's still a regulation of some sort. Billy says U.S. is run by a criminal mafia. That's one way to look at it. This is the government our founding fathers warned us about, indeed. And Bam says Jerry Muselik makes a revolver full auto. Is that speed shooter? Yeah, Billy, they should be, but it's not that easy. Helder says it's going to be illegal for 18 to 21-year-olds to own and possess firearms. Then wouldn't it make sense to forbid 18 to 21-year-olds from joining or being drafted in the military? Yeah, and that was the argument during Vietnam about voting. It was the same argument. Then if you're going to do that, then you need to change the standard. And there's 500 Magnum. Hey, everyone from Georgia. Thanks for joining us today. And there's Preparedness Veteran jumping in. Bingo says, anyone know the process for abolishing a government? Be careful. Be careful. You're going to get me in trouble here. Yeah, there you go, Preparedness. If you could even coordinate it anymore, it was a very different world then. Johnny says, I don't trust any words that come out of any politician's mouth, more so with local politicians. It seems local or worse. That's because they want to be bigger. Local politicians want to be the big boy. And even though governor of California is not enough, he's probably shooting for something bigger in the future. And he creates these he creates these situations. They all do. To be important, to be popular, to be the next big person. There's Arakel joining us today. Monkey, my professor from that college government class is a lawyer, so that helped a lot. Yeah, I got to be careful with some of these. Yeah, Prime says if rights can be taken from you, they're no longer rights, it's a privilege. Yeah, and we live under a system of privileges. That's what that is. We live under a system of privileges, and we've been convinced that it's freedom. You're free to do what we allow you to. It's as simple as that. Remember that rhyme. You are free to do what we allow you to, and that goes for any government. And again, some governments are better than others. You know, I'd rather be in the United States than most other places, especially nowadays. It's getting pretty bad. And places that used to be a lot better, you know, or seem better anyways, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, are cracking down on their people hard, crushing them. Yeah, Billy says government has a monopoly on violence. They do because it's legal for them. It's legal for them to be violent. It's not legal for you to be violent. And even if you're not violent, they can claim that you are. Take a look at January 6th and what's going on with that. Those people are getting very extended prison sentences. For what? What did they really do? Yeah. Careful, Arakel. And then 500 Magnum has some points there. I won't read it all. So again, I get in enough trouble on these live streams as it is. 500 Magnum, the government is a give and take relationship. They give us ship and we take. They give us shit and they take whatever they want, essentially. And it extends into so many different areas, and especially when it comes to honesty and transparency. And I've said this many times, they want you to be honest and for you to be transparent, because they are not honest and they are not transparent. And as a matter of fact, they don't have to be. They don't have to be transparent. and they don't have to be honest. It's illegal for them to be dishonest. And I know that from being involved with the Juvenile Justice Authority, that law enforcement and even the courts don't have to tell you the truth or all of it. They can be selective or they can downright deceive you. But if you lie, oh, you're in contempt. And you'll be charged. And you'll face penalties for it and punishments for it. But not them. If they do it, it's okay because they're upholding the law. It's kind of unfair. It's very unfair that we live in a system that does this. And again, it's not just the U.S. Show me a better government. It's a shame that this is the best system that you can find, or one of the best systems that you can find. A lot of people say, oh, what's better in Sweden, or it's better in, oh, go there and good luck and see how well you fare. It really kind of isn't. No, I haven't heard anything about Ray Epps Prime. Oh, Bam says, what do you think about Biden getting excited to see that toddler? Yeah, Biden's got some issues. Biden has got some serious issues. He is creepy. I saw a little bit on that, not too much. But he is creepy. That guy's scary. And Arakel says they abolished the mobs, the Al Capones and others, and took over. Simple as that. Yeah, and you could make an argument for that as well. It sort of seems that way. Well, you can't have them making money that you can't tax, because that's really what it comes down to. They want their cut. They don't care how they get it. Bingo says, how is the fact that we see zero from our federal taxes put it back into our infrastructure, etc., not taxation without representation? All of it is taxation without representation because you have no say in how any of it is spent. They just take it. We got to pay school taxes. We don't have a kid in public school, and we wouldn't put one in public school. Why am I paying school taxes? Fair question. I mean, I can understand if there are certain things it makes sense, like power line maintenance or something like that, something that you're going to use. But you have all your taxation without representation. They create the illusion of representation by saying that the person you voted for is your official representative. But they are not voting to spend your tax dollars the way that you would necessarily agree to have them spent. Therefore, technically, it's not representation. It's representation on paper, the way the law is written. But I don't feel like that's representation because I have no control over it, and I don't like the way that the majority of it is spent. Magnum says, to make matters worse, you have two-tier justice system. If you're woke and you're golden, if you're a patriot, you're tortured. Yeah. Or if it's family court, if you're male, you're tortured. Jack says, nonviolent criminals not being able to own guns is actually in the courts now. Shouldn't have to lose your 2A right over something as simple as being put on medical cannabis. Yeah, well, the Nature Nerd says Sweden has like 45% taxes and Finland over 50. Yeah, good example of what I'm talking about. If they take your money, they will take everything you've got. Eric Hill says the government, public servants go into a power trip, thus becoming a sickness. They sure do. No worries, Bingo. It's okay. I just get, like I said, I get it. I get strikes on these live streams, so I've just got to watch out. But yeah, they all back to this. Yeah, they go on a power trip. They absolutely do. It's a shame. And they all want to be the man behind the curtain. And it's kind of like, and I've brought this up before, it's kind of like The Godfather 2. And he brings all the lieutenants in and has a private meeting one at a time. And he's like, I think it's Godfather 2, right? Oh, you're the only guy I can trust. It's you. You're my number one. You tells that to everybody. But they all want to be the man behind the curtain. And they never saw Wizard of Oz, because even the wizard was a prisoner. Magnum says, I'm sure everyone here can relate to really love my country, but despite my government. Yeah, you can love your country and not your government. You know what I mean? That makes sense. You can love your country and not your government. You can be disappointed in your government like you can be disappointed in a bad child. Arakel says, when you vote and give a signature, you give them full authority upon you. Yeah. And then Dragon, with the government says you don't need a gun, that's when you need a gun immediately. Pretty much. And then speaking of which, here's how they bounce that around. Federal judge rules Oregon's tough new gun law is constitutional. Is it? See, a judge's job, and I've brought this up before, that's a nice spread right there, actually. A judge's job is to review something, determine if it's legal or not, and then make an ethical decision as to whether or not it's moral to enforce it. That's where you get skewed, because a lot of judges may or may not make a legal determination. They may make a personal interpretation for personal or political reasons, mostly political, because a judge is a very political position. Portland, Oregon. Yeah, great. A federal judge has ruled Oregon's voter-approved gun control measure, one of the toughest in the nation, is constitutional. U.S. District Judge Carlin Immergut ruled the banning large capacity magazines and requiring a permit to purchase a gun falls in line with the nation's history and tradition of regulating uniquely dangerous features of weapons and firearms to protect public safety. The decision comes after a landmark U.S. Supreme Court decision on the Second Amendment that has upended gun laws across the country, dividing judges and sowing confusion over what firearm restrictions can remain on the books. It changed the test that lower courts had long used for evaluating challenges to firearm restrictions, telling judges that gun laws must be consistent with historical tradition of firearm regulation. But what do you do with your recent historical tradition of regulation is an extremely strict one? Not an overall historical tradition, but a recent one. How far back does a tradition go within the recent history of that judge? A decade or two? A decade or two from, say, California or Oregon's perspective can be devastating to a gun owner if that's what you're going to do. When they made that ruling, they were trying to open it up for a more natural context of the Second Amendment, but that can be skewed as well, obviously. Let me try to catch up a little bit here. Jack says probably more people in this country hate the government that support it. I wouldn't be surprised. How do you not hate something that steals from you and lies to you, but you're expected to be loyal to it? That's like a prostitute. Prime says neat furniture. Where are we here? Sven says hazmat train derailment now in the east. Now no one knows how to do anything anymore, including Judge Evidently, rather. Magnum says, I take dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery all day, every day. I don't blame you. Johnny, when was the last time any leader from any country was so corrupt that even their guards would not protect him and was left to the devices of the open public? Probably not since Bible days. Yeah. Jack says, wouldn't this mean it goes to the Ninth Circuit now? They're just going to bounce it around. They're going to bounce it around. You know how that works. Playing games. Nature says in the 50s and 60s, taxes were outrageous. Ronald Reagan started the trend of lowering taxes to 28%, which made the economy boom and increased the amount of millionaires in America tenfold. He gets hammered a lot for his so-called Reaganomics, but the 80s saw a lot of prosperity. Bingo says 500%. Oh, he's talking to Magnum. I see. Anyone that would give up a little liberty for a little security deserves neither and will lose both. Who said that? Uniquely dangerous equals looks scary. Yeah, looks scary. And one of the main features they're targeting, of course, is what they refer to as high capacity magazines, which apparently is 10 rounds. Because you wouldn't need to use that to defend your home. You don't know what I need to defend my home. What do I do if 4 people break in? Okay, how about that? What they really want is for you to not be able to defend yourself against their system, which is why a lot of states are trying to ban body armor, because then you're completely helpless against who? Burglars with body armor and shields and automatic weapons? Who comes to your house with automatic weapons and armor and armored vehicles? Who does that? H12 says, I hate the way so many things are being redefined by changing the meaning of the rules. And that's how government works. Chris says, good afternoon. Just got stung 3 times by a wasp. Yeah, they're relentless. I've been stung by wasps before. That's not fun. Indeed. Let's see. Come on, work. There we go. Helder says the judge should have rescued herself from this matter. She has a history of working in favor of gun control issues. She benefited from a gilded upbringing and shielded academia with emigre parents. Yeah. From nations without any firearms traditions coupled with notions of governance and power rising in royalty, she is ill-equipped to honestly analyze individual liberties. Yeah, out of touch with the common folk, like most politicians are. And Chris says Portland and San Francisco are lawless mini Gothams at this point. Sodom and Gomorrah. Preparedness says, I doubt any of these issues would be solved unless something drastic changes or is made to change. Yeah, it would have to be forced. It would have to be forced, and you got to be careful with that. You got to be careful even how you say it. Dragon says, I really want some gun legislation to be titled the Well-Regulated Militia Act just to watch conservatives' heads explode. Sven says, San Fran billionaires killed in the streets. Will his son become Batman? Nope, just follow. Okay. They do have maps for poop. Actually, that's how bad it is. Jack says people don't think about when they put us on cashless money, everything, including gun sale, can be tracked and kept on record. They can already track it because it goes on a specific record. There's a number that goes in. There's a number that goes in for the sales, a code that goes into a register, but that code can be matched with your method of payment. So unless you paid straight cash at the time of purchase, then your credit card, your debit card, whatever method you use to pay for it, has a record of that sale. Furthermore, and that goes for ammunition as well. Furthermore, if when you do your Brady check, even though they may not know specifically what you're purchasing, then the federal government knows you made a purchase anyways. So they know you have something, even if they don't know exactly what it is. H12 says, note to self and whoever, when you make your raised garden beds, remember that you have to fill it with dirt shoveled by you. True. I haven't heard that. Sound of Freedom? Oh, the movie. We talked about that. Yeah. We talked about that last, Friday? We talked about the Sound of Freedom because they're doing a lot to try to bury that film. They're embarrassed by it because it's a low budget movie that's actually doing very well at the box office. They're trying to make it sound exaggerated. They're making it sound like, because it's based on a true story, loosely, because they're going to exaggerate for the film. But it's based on real events and a real system and a real service that's rescued thousands of children and put hundreds of people in jail. But the system, the media that's been talking about it, and the studios and everybody are acting like, oh well, it's all made up. This doesn't happen. Yes, the hell it does. Why are they trying to bury that? Why are they trying to bury it? It makes you wonder about the people that are trying to cover that up. Who's in charge? Preparedness says in Britain the digital pound is going to be introduced within the next 5 years. Then you're really in trouble. Oh man, Danimal sat on a wasp. That couldn't have been nice. Yeah, Bam says if you make a background check, they know exactly what you have. And Jack says it's killing it and showing all these woke ones are in the toilet. Who's that? Dusty? Hi, Dusty. How you doing? The government is smarter than people give them credit for. People like to pretend like they're stupid. They know exactly what they're doing, and you've got to be very careful. You've got to be very careful. Now, this one, I better get Dusty for this one. Actually, it's a good thing you showed up. This next story is going to get me in trouble. Come here. Come on, dear. Come and sit in the camera for a minute so the algorithm will be confused. It says, show us the kitty. She's a little wet because she had a bath. She's actually very calm at bath time. She doesn't panic or cry. She's a good girl. Aren't you a good girl? She doesn't care. But yeah, the story I'm about to pull up might get me in a little bit of trouble. Prime wanted to see the cat anyways. Chris says many stores already have gone cashless, no more cashiers at self-checkout. Yeah, they're getting rid of the cashiers. And then the way that they get you in a lot of those stores like Walmart and stuff is that the register that has cash isn't running properly. Billy says Sounds of Freedom is more based on the story than most Hollywood crap based is true. Yeah, that's true. It's closer than a lot of the stuff you're going to see. Fair enough. Jack says, are those Cabbage Patch Kids under the flag? No, that's Raggedy Ann and Andy and a Care Bear. Those belong to my wife. The Raggedy Ann and Andy is supposed to be us. See? Because it's a black ant. Yeah, Billy. Yeah, she's very, very gray, fully gray. Even her skin underneath is gray. So it's one of those rare things where they match all over. Yeah, Bingo says they're not trying to normalize the P word so they no longer have to hide on private islands. Yeah, making it sound like that's normal and natural, and it is not. There's nothing normal or natural about having desires for someone who doesn't even have all their primary teeth. It's disgusting. Hey, Cyborg. Yeah, you made it on time. Yeah, she's very calm. She's a very calm animal. And like I said, she's good in the bath. Manned Animal says, love the cat. So do we. We love taking care of the poor abandoned. And of course, all the cats that are in our home and that we take care of in the backyard are all abandoned animals. So somebody ditched this poor friendly creature here. Prime says, I think Dusty is a Karat, white patch on the chest. They're Thailand cats. I don't think she has a white patch on her chest. Do you have a white patch? The one in the back does. There's another gray cat in the back that is like a full-blood Korat that somebody dumped. We take care of him. That's Squeaky, because he makes a lot of noise. Yeah, her gray. She is almost blue. It's hard to tell in the image here, but we'll go ahead and we'll pull up this next topic here, because this I'm going to read behind the lines on this particular story. Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. Got to be careful there, though. He'll probably show up at my house. He'll send the Pinkertons after me. And Bernab says, "Good afternoon. Yeah, thanks for joining us, Bernab. Or is it Bernab or Bernabi? Just make sure I pronounce it right." It says, "Who is Dr. Blair Peters? Queer surgeon who operates on trans kids admits they face slew of issues in hastily deleted video." Yeah, I see what you mean. I could see that because he's fully gray except for that one white spot. And I kind of regret. I usually when I send them in to be spayed and neutered, I tell them not to clip the ear, but they clipped his ear. And I'm like, oh crap, did I tell them not to? So now he's got a chunk out of his ear, and I hate that. Chris says, "I think this is the doctor who says we're coming for your kids." You'll see what he's talking about here in a second. Magnum says, "We're going to be screwed no matter who's in there, but we have to vote to get Biden out. He's too freaking old and senile. And we're going to have retirement age tired as senior citizens running the country." Well, they all should have limits anyways, but they're the ones that vote for the limits, and they're going to vote no. All right, so who is this guy? And he looks ridiculous anyways. To me, he does. And I'm going to read this, and I'm going to tell you what I think. Los Angeles, California, of course. In a now deleted video, a surgeon going by the name Dr. Frankenstein spoke openly about the drawbacks of performing genital reshaping procedures on T, I got to be careful, T children and adults. And it says in the video, Dr. Blair Peters, a self-described queer surgeon with pink hair who uses he, they pronouns and has a passion for genital procedures, claims that the patients must deal with lifetime post-operative difficulties related to fertility, sexual satisfaction, and other issues. All right, now, and it says Peters is an assistant professor of surgery in the Division of Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery at Oregon Health and Science University. Peters, who uses the pronouns he, they, pushes for gender-affirming care in the medical field. He's one of the first two fellows in gender-affirming surgery at Oregon Health and Science University. Blah, blah, blah. They go on and on to tell you who he is. Now, here's where I start having, you want to go down? Go ahead. Here's where I start having issues. First, he kind of takes a stand and says, puts up a video talking openly about drawbacks of performing these surgeries on children and adults, because there are major drawbacks: the inability to have sex, the lack of desire of having sex, permanent open wounds. Most of you know already the fact that if you think or realize you've made a mistake, you can't undo it. Some of the things done in those surgeries are permanent. They cannot be fixed. They cannot be fixed. Yeah, Cyborg. All he needs is the little mustache, a little pink one, maybe a purple one. Prime says, "That's the type of person I want coming at me with a scalpel." Yeah, indeed. And Dragon says, "The most scary part is Blair Peters is convinced he's doing good, playing with body, playing with nature, playing with God." My issue is he mentions that there's drawbacks patients must deal with, and this is the truth. Patients must deal with lifetime post-operative difficulties related to fertility, sexual satisfaction, and other issues. And he knows, this guy knows that he's altering these people in a way that it cannot be fixed, and that they may never recover from, that may make their psychological conditions worse, that may cause medical conditions to get worse. He knows he's hurting them, but still champions it, saying he has a passion for genital procedures. Oh, but they're dangerous. I have a passion for it, but it's dangerous, and you're probably making a mistake if you do it. which is why he had to take the video down, because his community, which is extremely intolerant, attacked him for it, attacked him for the video, which was an honest video, but then still, he'll still do the surgeries. So much for your Hippocratic oath. So what's more important to you? The fact that you know you're hurting people and want to put out a warning, hey, you might want to think twice. Oh, but I'll still do it for you. Yeah, Chris, at least Trump is sharp. That's true. No matter what people may not like him, but at least the guy's sharp as a tack. Manned Animal says there's 4 button actors. Pay attention. 1 blue eyes, 2 brown eyes, 3 black eyes, 4 obvious plastic marks lines. You think, hey, maybe they're drones. Maybe Elon Musk made them. And different heights. Bernob says the same thing was said of Ronald Reagan if you were around back then. But President Reagan didn't want to destroy the country. No, he had an affinity for the United States. These guys are trying to destroy us. H12 says, sometimes I wonder if the senility of Biden is an act. I've talked about that on this channel a lot. I call it his plausible deniability, because a lot of, I bring this up many times actually, that if, that many high level politicians receive acting lessons. They're trained how to respond. Obama is a great example of this. So it could be an act. It could be deniable plausibility. And I've often compared him to Uncle Leo from Seinfeld. If you ever watched Seinfeld and you remember the episode where he got arrested for shoplifting and immediately pretended to be senile and not know where he was. It's plausible. It's plausible. Manned Animal says if he did outside an operating room, he'd get the death penalty. Yeah. Prime says I have a passion for genital service. Yeah, Jeffrey Dahmer. There you go. There you go. And Rodney is here. Rodney made a $10 donation to the channel. Thank you very much, Rodney. That goes a long way, because primarily my first concern with any of the donations is for taking care of the critters, taking care of the stray animals. But I love my coffee too. So thank you very much, Rodney. That's very much appreciated. And dude, suddenly, oh, the horror of just thinking about such procedures. You can find those procedures. You can find videos, both digitally simulated and the actual surgery are available online. It is terrifying. It is terrifying to look at, because I have seen it. And I've watched it because I like to know what I'm talking about. And again, especially where the male is concerned, converting to a female, there's an open wound that must be kept open for life, and they have a device that you have to wear, because it will try to seal up, but it is an open wound, very prone to infection, seeps. It's disgusting. And sex, forget it. And that's going to screw you up even more psychologically. The whole T movement is the modern day equivalent of eunuchs. At least with a eunuch, they only took your balls off. It's incredible. Helter says the issue is the people in power are taking stupid pet ideas from academia and forcing it on many subjects, citizens, students, employees. That's true. And Manned Animal says sometimes they're literally robots. They delay answers to questions waiting for input. But yeah, guys like this, that just turns my stomach. And again, the hypocrisy of it. And you took a Hippocratic oath, not that an oath is worth anything more than the person who spoke it, but you took an oath, I will do no harm. And here you are admitting that you're hurting people, and children especially. But hey, as long as those checks keep rolling in, screw them kids. The hell with them. That's about where it bottoms out to, unfortunately. You're doing something that that cannot be fixed. because the majority of them, they won't tell you this. And again, part of that comes from my, and this is back in the day. Remember my interviews in the early 90s. Back then, you had to go to see a psychiatrist for like 2-3 years before they'd even give you the freaking meds. They wanted to make damn sure you knew what you were doing. And then they still regretted it and wanted to reverse it, sitting there crying. This didn't get rid of my depression. I'm still miserable. I want to kill myself now. They're telling me it can't be reversed. Of course it can't be reversed. They've taken things away from you they can't put back, for the males and the females. You know? Yeah, I don't blame you, dude. Even the CGI simulated ones that look like a 90s video game are creepy to look at. Yeah, Prime. There you go. Gonna get me in trouble. Bam says I started to think about the Highlander. There can be only one. Bingo says, got to punch out. I'll be listening but can't comment. Okay. Yeah, hey, thanks for joining us. Glad that you were able to drop in. Yeah, Prime. I got to be careful. You know I keep getting strikes. I keep coming back, but I keep getting strikes. Here, we'll show another cat. Say hi, Miss Kitty. Hello, dear. Good girl. I have a lot of empathy for poor Miss Kitty. She was a very abused animal. That's why I don't mess with her. Now this one, this one just for the fun of it. If it pops up, Disney's live-action Snow White under fire for replacing seven dwarfs with magical creatures of all sizes and genders. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. And indeed, and I'll show you the images here. And there's been a lot of talk about this. Dude says, "Cat to the rescue." Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. As she sleeps here on my desk. And here is the leaked images. There's the original dwarves, and here's the new ones. Disney's forthcoming live-action Snow White is under fire for being so politically correct that it is reimagining the seven dwarves as magical creatures of all sizes and genders. And, you know, dwarf actors are actually pretty pissed off about this, I've heard. The film, which is slated for release next year with Hispanic actress Rachel Zegler as the fairy tale heroine, made waves this week after a Snow White stand-in was seen wandering around Bedfordshire, England, followed by a gaggle of brightly colored friends of various genders, races, and sizes, modernizing the 1937 film. Not everyone is bewitched by the Mouse House's modern take on the fairy tale as critics began attacking the set photos, with some calling them unbelievable. And of course, there's your hashtag that people are throwing around on Disney, but they've been throwing that around on Disney for years. There she is. And there's the dwarves. And I more so have a problem. Well, they could have done a lot better with this costume. I more so have an issue with the dwarves. What the heck is going on here? Well, there's a dwarf. Miss Kitty, quit shaking the table. There's a dwarf. I don't know. These people look ridiculous. And who's this guy? There's 8 people here, right? Yeah, that's 8. Who's this? Is that the prince? Is that the huntsman? Who is this? You have one dwarf. Kitty. There's the original, which was a classic, a massive classic, because this is the first animated film to demonstrate that you could make an animated film that would draw people to the theaters. It's historical. It has a strong historical value. Dragon says, with how much did Disney love CGI, they could have superimposed 7 digital clones of Danny DeVito. That's 2. Mandanimal says, Little Red Riding Hood. Yeah, I don't know what's up with that costume. Billy says, costumes look like trash. Shawnee says, speaking of mental illness, what ideas do you have to dealing with a Teotihuacan not talking about teas more than worse kinds of illness? I almost thought you were putting Teotihuacan, the end of the world as we know it. Is that what you mean? Make sure that you keep your mind occupied. Have things to keep yourself occupied so you're not sitting there bored all day. Board games, card games, stuff like that. You know, when you sit around in barracks in the military and they're out in the middle of nowhere with nothing to do, somebody's got a pack of cards. They'll make stuff up just to keep their minds going. Monkey says I was going to say if Snow White was still same character, it looks like she's got slaves instead of dwarves. Budget is like 10K. I bet you the budget is insane. I bet you the budget's like $300 million. Dude says such an insult to the original tale. Again, it has a massive historical value, the original Snow White, because again, that was the definitive film to prove you could make a feature-length film that would draw in a big audience and not kids, adults, because most of those movies were written for adults, but themed in a way that children could still watch it. You know what I mean? Helter says Disney made things worse for themselves, but they're always going to have problems because of simple demographics. Helter says when most of your success is based on children programming and theme parks, then a sharp decline in the number of births is going to hurt you. Preparedness says youngsters will not know any different. They're reshaping the next generation. Will all soon be looked at as silly old fools. Yeah, until the next rotation. Kitty, cut it out. That's what they're hoping for, is that they're not going to know. And that's why it's important for the older generation to debrief their children, especially if they have to go to public school. Debrief your kids every day. Talk to them. Make sure you understand what they're watching. Try to control it. My kids, we didn't even have cable. My kids watched DVDs that I had myself. I had a big library of DVDs. I knew exactly what they were looking at if they wanted to watch something. They couldn't access anything without my knowing about it. You've got to deprogram what they're trying to program into your children at every given opportunity. That's the only way. We've got to free them of it, but because they're hoping that these kids aren't going to remember, aren't going to know the difference. There's Urban. Thanks for joining us, Urban. But this is ridiculous, and they keep shooting themselves in the foot with it because it's not working, and then they're going to attack the audience. Oh, it's because you're all phobic. You're all phobic, and you're all this ick and that ick. It's ridiculous. Jack says, "Gotta wonder what Disney would think if he could see what's happening to his company, yeah, or the country." I don't think he'd like what happened with any of his properties. Baki says, "Debrief is a good word." Yeah, and again, especially if your kid goes to public school, if you can't teach them privately, if you can't homeschool or have them at least in a private school, when they come home every day, what did you see? What did you hear? Well, here, this is what that really means. This is why they told you this. And again, debrief them, deprogram them every day. Prime says being a Snow White dwarf might not necessarily be a bad thing. Maybe she has a fondness for laced apples. Laced apples. Preparedness says kids have many avenues of input from phones, TV to computer games than the educational system. Yeah, which is why you need to know your kids and talk to them. And most parents nowadays don't know their kids. They don't talk to their kids, don't communicate with them. They have been programmed themselves to basically ignore them and let the system raise their children. And that's unfortunate. The government will raise them. The public school will raise them. Head Start's going to raise them. I have to work. Do you? How much work do you need to do? I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it. So it's unfortunate. But this is what they're doing. This is what they've done. And Disney denied it. This is the fun part. Disney denied it and then took it back. Take a look at this really quick. Anytime. Disney backtracks claim the photos of new politically correct Snow White movie were fake. And there's Bob. Greetings. A bit late. Well, it should be saved, so you can always go back and see it again if you want to. But glad you were able to join us today. It says Disney backtracked on its claim the photos showing Snow White's new accomplices, previously called the Seven Dwarfs, were fake in what a news outlet said was a misunderstanding on its correction notice. Daily Mail published a story Friday showing an inside look into Disney's live-action production from the classic film. The outlet accused Disney of adapting the film's iconic characters into magical creatures to be politically correct, which is exactly what they've done. Disney denied it. The photos are fake and not from our production. We're trying to have the Daily Mail issue a correction, Disney spokesman told the Daily Beast. But then they took it back because it is from their production, and they can deny it if they want to, but that is their production photos. Now they say, to avoid reinforcing stereotypes from the original animated film, it's a fantasy in a fantasy world where dwarves exist. And I mean like dwarves as a race of people, not dwarves like we have dwarves. We are taking a different approach with these 7 characters and have been consulting with members of the dwarvism community. I doubt that because they're not happy either. There's more lies from Disney. Prime, I have not actually seen Sounds of Freedom. I have not actually seen the film. And then Dragon says, Disney appears to want to go out of business. It looks that way. It looks that way. And they have these things that they go through. They have these things that they go through that, yeah, Rodney, Disney's claim the picture was fake served its purpose. A lie was around the world before the truth got its trousers on. They have these phases where they try to fleece people by redoing their own properties. For those of you who are not old enough to remember, during the days of VHS, they had the thing called the Disney Vault. Now, VHS cassettes back in the 80s averaged around $100 a piece. Okay, they were expensive. So were VCRs. And Disney would release a film. Come on, Miss Kitty, scratching the heck out of herself. Something wrong? Why are you so itchy today? Do you need a bath too? They would say, oh, we're only releasing Fox and the Hounds for a limited time, and then it goes back in the Disney Vault, and you may never see it again. But you would, because they would re-release it again in another format a few years later, and they pulled the Vault switcheroo many times. And then DVD started getting popular. And during the DVD era, they went through this phase where they were making sequels to things that didn't need them. Cinderella was a standalone film. It didn't need a Cinderella 2, 3, and 4. You know what I mean? We didn't need Peter Pan 2. They were making animated sequels to films that didn't need them, that already had their closure. Now we're in this era of live actions where they want to make a live action of every stupid thing, but they can't even make it true to the core of the original story. If you're going to make a live action, make it like the original, but in live action, if you're going to bother to do that. No, we can't do that. Now we're in this phase where we've got to inject social politics in everything, but they're killing their core audience because people don't like that. Even the people they're pandering to don't want to see it. And their theme parks are taking a bath. Their theme parks are getting the crap kicked out of them. Helter says, I think the saddest part about this is, in this case, highlights a complete lack of original thought. Yeah, no idea, new ideas or stories. Let's just trash something we've done before. Baki says, Disney destroyed my Star Wars. No actual story anymore. Random explosions, random characters. Yeah, a lot of people agreed with that. I like the original trilogy myself. The second trilogy, the prequel, it was okay. It could have been a lot better, but it was all right. To lean too heavily on CGI. But the modern stuff, it's it's disappointing. The whole purpose behind their new trilogy was to dispose of all of their legacy characters. Mandanimal says, love your show. Been watching since the start. I often lurk or watch. The replay have to go now. Great audience too. Well, thank you. I'm glad you've been. I'm glad you get something out of the content. I'm glad you do. And it is hurting them a great deal. And I'll show you this last one here. Because Disney is hurting as a result, but they're so deep in this, they can't back off. They can't back it up now. They can't back away from it because they're in it too deep already. They've lost too much to back off. Because then they'd have to admit they were wrong and they'd have to apologize. Says Disney theme park surprisingly empty this summer as ticket prices remain high. And the ticket prices are at an all-time high. And they're not empty necessarily, but there's a lot less traffic. I think they said this past summer, has been a record low for the theme park. Lowest it's ever been in attendance. It says Walt Disney World and Disneyland have seen significantly shorter wait times to get on rides, a sign that visitors are staying away from the summer, staying away this summer as the Mouse House struggles to attract guests, apparently put off by the exorbitant ticket prices, according to a report. Maybe they're just sick of Disney looking like an evil empire. Maybe they're sick of hearing reports of Disney executives being arrested for messing with kids. Maybe they're sick of course, high ticket prices. Maybe they're sick of all of the agendas being injected into Disney products or Disney productions and films and TV shows. Maybe they're tired of it. Maybe failed projects like the Star Wars theme, since that already just came up. They're already shutting that down. They're closing it because it's not making any money. First of all, it's extremely expensive. It'll cost you thousands just for a couple of days. And then apparently it's themed on the modern films. That's not what the core Star Wars audience wants. You didn't give the people what they wanted, and then you charged them a fortune for it. You don't think word of mouth is going to talk about the bad experience or the disappointing experience that they had? And you spent billions on that project and couldn't make your money. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe people are just disappointed with Disney. Maybe it's not the Magic Kingdom anymore. It seemed like it was when I was a kid. What happened? What changed? You murdered it. It says data from the analyst firm Touring Plans shows that smaller crowds have descended on the Walt Disney Company US-based theme parks as well as its competitors, according to the Wall Street Journal. The thinning traffic is bad news for the entertainment giant, which is in the midst of a $5.5 billion cost-cutting spree that has resulted in layoffs across its divisions, including sports cable empire ESPN. They've ruined that too. Touring Plans, which measures wait times through information posted by Disney parks on their mobile apps, compiled data comparing the average wait times for rides at the four Walt Disney. Yeah, I don't care about all that. Let's get to the point. Hollywood Studios, which features Disney Star Wars attractions, saw its third slowest day of the past year on the 4th of July, according to Tourist Plans. On and on, crying about how they're just not making money anymore. And they're blaming high ticket prices and hot temperatures in Florida. Oh, it's hot in Florida. I never realized that. So let's blame it on the weather. It's the weather's fault. Jack says the biggest go woke, go broke example in history. They're not learning from Bud Light and Target. No, they're part of the problem. They're part of the problem, Jack. Baki says they were charging 2 arms and 2 legs to go to the Star Wars parks. Yeah, and then it wasn't what people wanted. Even modern Star Wars audiences want the core stuff. And that's the legacy characters. They're not getting it. I don't see anybody going to conventions dressing up in modern Star Wars apparel. Sportsmobile says last time we went to Disney in 2020, we stood in line all day and got on 4 or 5 rides. See, that's disappointing too. Helter says at the rate Disney's performing, I think it'd be better if Disney got acquired by an actual good company like Comcast, NBC, or Universal. Bam says thousands of kids that have disappeared from the Disney theme park should be the reason itself to keep your children away. Yeah, and remember, up until the Florida governor overturned their self-governing status, that was something Disney handled themselves. Think about it. Urban says Disney picked the wrong time to go ultra woke. People are broke. Gen Xers are squeezed between elderly parents, and some still have small children too. In Canada, affordable housing is gone forever. And again, like I said, even the people they're pandering to within their own community, within those communities, the Rainbow Brigade, if you will, don't support it. The majority of them don't. You're pandering to a core group of activists, not that community or those communities like you think they are. They're not supporting you. They don't care about you. They don't love you, sweetheart. I'm sorry. It's time to let them go. It's time to give it up. It's like that movie Bros. Again, it died in the box office. It was miserable. It did terrible. What was the problem with it? Even their own community didn't come out and support it. People didn't want to see that. Monkey says Disney started to expand too much when Disney wanted to be politically correct and be all inclusive, as if it wasn't. As if you had purple hair, you couldn't go there, right? They were going to throw you out in the street, beat you up in the curb. Or what was that on Death Clock? Put the boots to them, medium style. Rebooting things that shouldn't be rebooted. Yeah, the Snow White cast reminds me of Time Bandits. There's a classic for you. Chris says Disney is trash. Went with the family, and all you do is wait in line. Now they've ruined ESPN, and all their movies are by pushing left narratives. Helter says one possible explanation for the lower attendance at Disney is the high prices of the park tickets. When families find these high costs, they may opt out for alternative vacation destinations. Yeah, the prices aren't helping, and they're raising the prices to compensate for the lack of interest, but they're not examining why people aren't interested. They don't want to hear it. Baki says facts: Luke's, Han, Leia, and Vader, the Emperor too, should have kept it classic. That's all anybody wanted. It's not as if there isn't enough material out there. Hell, they could have taken Dark Empire from Dark Horse Comics and made that the next trilogy. People would have ate it up. You know what I mean? There's a lot of literature. There must be 300 Star Wars novels. Read a few of them and see if anything it would be good to adapt to the big screen. Which, I mean, even Rogue One wasn't a bad film. You know, that wasn't a bad project. But their new trilogy was. I didn't even finish it. So we go ahead and wrap up here. Helter says in France, Disneyland parks facing massive backlash after they unveiled their new annual places, which are increased in price. Chris says, I saw a video at the park and they had a man dressed up as a princess. Yeah, a man with a beard. They've got like DQ ambassadors, especially at the dress shops. So, have the areas where you can go and dress up like a princess or dress up in a costume. I don't want those people talking to my kids. I'm sorry. And that doesn't come from some jaded perspective I have of the communities. Again, that comes from the interviews I did for the Boston Phoenix in the 90s. There's something really wrong that isn't talked about. Billy says, I heard some info that the CEO of BlackRock pays these companies to put out woke content. I've heard that too. Monkey says, just like the Cleveland Indians changing their name to Cleveland Guardians, pandered to people that think Indians is a derogatory term when it's more of honoring them. Yeah. And the Indians don't care. I brought that up last week. It's in one of the live streams that there was somebody, because they were doing a thing about, they pushed the Kansas City Chiefs to change their names as well. But they went around Kansas and interviewed native Indians, because there's a lot of them out there, and they didn't care. Something like 87% of them said, I don't care what the Chiefs do. I don't care what they call themselves. They don't care. Who are you protecting? Yeah, Chris says corporate equity index. Chiefs is something to be proud of, in KC work with the tribes. Yeah, they Native Indian designed their logo way back in the day. Yeah, Chris says Washington Redskins is what I still call the team. If I'm thinking of the right team, right? It was they hired a Native Indian artist to design the logo. It's not. It's a homage. A it's not an insult by any means of the term. But anyway, I'll go ahead and wrap things up. Thanks to everybody who joined us this afternoon. I hope you got something out of the discussion. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully, I didn't get in too much trouble. We'll find out later, and I'll probably let you know if I did. So, with that, I'll go ahead and sign off. Thanks again to everybody who have helped out with the GoFundMe and through other means to help to take care of the strays that we take care of. And I'll try to do another update video on that here soon. So, with that, I'll go ahead and sign off.